trying to exploit the system, and your greed is harming Nevadans. Our office will be prioritizing unemployment fraud going forward because prompt payments of benefits can make a big difference to Nevadans who need help. Yesterday, with the help of state, local, and federal law enforcement, prosecutors in my white-collar crime section who are here with me today brought a total of 14 felony charges against 10 individuals in 6 different criminal complaints. The complaints allege, in sum and substance, that these defendants collectively were defrauding the unemployment systems here and across 2 other states. In general terms, I want to describe the fraud. It involves, as the screen behind me shows, it involves $1.2 million of approved unemployment benefits, more than 50 unemployment prepaid debit cards, as well as the states of Nevada, Arizona, and California's unemployment systems. In August of this year, our office charged the first criminal complaint related to unemployment fraud. The name of that case was United States versus Okoye. At the time, we said it was just the tip of the iceberg with respect to unemployment fraud. And since then, the people with me here today have been working extremely hard to uncover unemployment fraudsters. Today's announcement is what the public already knew intuitively, that there's fraud that's happening and that law enforcement is working hard to stop it. These cases were made possible. The cases that we're announcing today, they were made possible by the hard-working women and men investigating them in law enforcement. And also the hard-working women and men who were out in the field yesterday effectuating various arrests. Without them, we aren't here, so I want to thank them and recognize them now. Department of Labor, Office of Inspector General. United States Postal Service, Office of Inspector General. United States Secret Service, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Nevada Attorney General's Office, A.G. Ford's prosecutors and investigators have been collaborating with us along the way. I also want to thank by name Assistant United States Attorney Jim Fang, who put these cases together, and his section chief in the white-collar section, Tony Lopez. Thank you. Finally, I want to recognize the government entities that were working alongside the prosecutors to process various requests from law enforcement in order to bring these cases to a charging decision. And that is Nevada DETR, the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, California's Employment Development Department, and Arizona's Department of Employment Services. I want to recognize them for their help in processing the various claims of assistance that investigators made. Next, I want to turn to a few of the cases and talk about the casework that's involved in this law enforcement operation. There are 6 cases in total, and a common thread between all of them is that the defendants allegedly engaged in a scheme to either submit fraudulent unemployment applications to those various states, in some cases, illegally from unemployment benefit cards that were prepaid that they were in possession of. I'm going to take a few moments today to talk about 3 of the 6 cases. The first case is United States Jasmine Black. The complaint face sheet is up behind me. This case illustrates how unemployment fraud is a priority for our office and for law enforcement generally, and that law enforcement is going to continue to follow up on the leads that are generated in each one of these investigations. In United States versus Jasmine Black, the complaint alleges that a United States postal carrier, Ms. Black, was assisting a defendant who we charged earlier this summer in an unemployment fraud scheme, Mr. Okoye. Here's how the scheme worked. Miss Black was employed by the United States Postal Service as a postal carrier with a route here in Las Vegas. She would inform Mr. Okoye of straw mailing addresses where residents either didn't retrieve their mail often or at all. And there's a picture behind me. It's a text message from WhatsApp on the screen behind me. It's a WhatsApp message. Miss Black sent this to Mr. Okoye. And this is an interesting piece of evidence because it shows the scheme as it was happening. In this text message, Miss Black says, just continue to use the Bennett Mountain address, and you try the Shawnee Ridge address. Check their box. And the Bennett Mountain lady, she doesn't, it's a vacation home. So for his part, Mr. Okoye is alleged to have submitted fraudulent unemployment applications associated with this address, or his co-schemers were, which then caused Dieter to send pre-approved debit cards to those addresses and several others in Las Vegas. In one instance, up to 18 Dieter debit cards in different names were sent to one address on Miss Black's postal route. In another instance, 10 debit cards from Dieter were sent to an address on Miss Black's postal. And those 10 cards were all in different names. This last picture behind me is a picture of how Miss Black and Mr. Okoye, Miss Black would intercept mail Dieter sent to the straw mailing addresses that Miss Black had identified for Mr. Okoye. Personally deliver them to Mr. Okoye. When Mr. Okoye was arrested in July, I'm going to remind you that we alleged that he was in possession of approximately $100,000 in cash and that indicia of fraud in his possession, including these prepaid debit cards. Ms. Black, for her conduct, is facing 3 felony federal charges, including conspiracy to commit mail fraud, which carries with it a maximum sentence of 20 years in federal prison, aggravated identity theft, which carries with it a 2-year mandatory consecutive sentence, and obstruction of the United States mail, which carries with it a 5-year federal prison sentence as a maximum. The second case that I'm going to go into some detail about is United States versus Greenland. This is a 3-defendant case, and it arose from extraordinary investigatory work following a routine traffic stop. On August 8th of this year, a Metro officer stopped a rented Maserati with 3 individuals inside: Mr. Greenland, Ms. Greisel, and Mr. Nager. During the search of that Maserati, Metro found $45,000 of cash, also pictured behind me, and 8 California EDD cards, these prepaid debit cards that we've been talking about, as well as ATM receipts, and indicia that these defendants were gambling at nearby casinos. All 3 defendants are charged with 2 federal felonies: conspiracy to effect illegal transactions with access devices, the debit cards, carrying with it a statutory maximum sentence of 15 years in federal prison, aggravated identity theft, which carries with it a 2-year mandatory consecutive sentence, and then defendants Greenland and Ms. Greisel are additionally charged with illegal transactions with access devices, essentially using these prepaid debit cards right here in Las Vegas, at Las Vegas ATMs. The final case that I'm going to talk about today is United States versus Joseph Holmes et al. This is a 2-defendant case. It arose from another routine traffic stop. Last month, September 18th, Metro officers stopped a Mercedes-Benz sedan driven by Emilio Rochester. Joseph Holmes was in the passenger seat. Alleged to have found or be in possession of 16 EDD California cards were discovered during that traffic stop. And none of those cards were in the names of Holmes or Rochester. Additional investigation revealed other indicia of unemployment fraud. Essentially 5 cell phones, 3 laptop computers, a tablet, and $90,000 in cash. The stacks of cash, are pictured behind me in both of the screens. Both defendants are now charged with conspiracy to possess counterfeit and unauthorized access device cards, and which carries with it a 10-year a 10-year maximum sentence, and again aggravated identity theft, which carries with it a 2-year mandatory consecutive sentence. 7 of the 10 of these defendants are in custody, either in state or federal custody. They'll be making their initial appearance either tomorrow or later today in federal court. With that, I want to turn it over to Special Agent in charge of the U.S. Department of Labor, OIG, Quentin Hayden. Zach Hayden. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the U.S. Attorney's Office and our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners for having me here today. My name is Quentin Hayden. I'm the Special Agent in charge for the United States Department of Labor's Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General is the primary federal law enforcement agency responsible for investigating fraud involving the unemployment insurance program. Since the pandemic began, our office has seen a dramatic uptick in unemployment insurance fraud occurring throughout the nation as identity thieves and organized criminal groups continue to exploit program weaknesses. Historically, our unemployment insurance fraud investigations accounted for approximately 10% of our workload. Today, more than 70% of our investigative matters pertain to unemployment insurance, and that number continues to grow by the day. Specific schemes we are investigating include fraudulent claims for benefits using stolen identities, as well as fictitious employers used to establish fraudulent work histories. We continue to work these investigations diligently despite the risk of exposure to the virus and the possible impact on their own health. They do so to protect the integrity of our nation's unemployment program, to ensure that vital benefits are available to those who need them to survive during this economic and health crisis. This has been demonstrated once again in this week's arrests of the defendants in these cases. They were made without incident. Since April of this year, the Office of Inspector General has been working diligently to analyze large amounts of data obtained from the Nevada Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation, the California Employment Development Department, the Arizona Department of Economic Security, as well as other state workforce agencies throughout the country. We've done this in order to the unprecedented levels of unemployment fraud that we are seeing. We have also emphasized public and law enforcement awareness in this area. This included using multiple fraud alerts nationally, as well as regional law enforcement bulletins that outline various unemployment fraud schemes and indicators of fraud. We also engaged in efforts with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners. These efforts have resulted in an unprecedented number of criminal referrals to our office, which have led to multi-state, multi-million-dollar unemployment fraud insurance. This week's arrests, conducted by the Department of Justice's National Unemployment Insurance Fraud Task Force, demonstrates the strength of our partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the U.S. Secret Service, the FBI, the IRS, the U.S. Postal Service Office of Inspector General, the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and the Nevada, California, and Arizona state workforce agencies. In closing, I would like to personally thank the efforts of the Nevada, California, and Arizona state workforce agencies. Without their daily diligence in analyzing the data and providing significant investigative support, these investigations would not be possible. I also want to recognize the outstanding work being done by our law enforcement officers on the front lines. Their professionalism and commitment while performing their daily duties has led to multiple significant and impactful criminal investigations. Finally, I want those individuals who intend to defraud the unemployment insurance program to know that the Office of Inspector General, along with our law enforcement partners up here today, will continue to work diligently to protect the integrity of the unemployment insurance program and to ensure that those who exploit it will be. Thank you.
Next, it's my privilege to introduce John Masters, the Executive Special Agent in Charge, United States Postal Service Office of Inspector General. John?
Good afternoon, everyone. As Nick said, my name is John Masters. As the Executive Special Agent in Charge for the U.S. Postal Service Office of Inspector General, Office of Investigations for the Western Area Field Office. I want to thank Nick and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the invitation and the ability to speak with you today about the events that we are covering. I also want to thank the law enforcement agencies that are present and not present for all of the work that they have done on this operation. And I specifically want to thank the Law Enforcement Metropolitan Department, Digital Investigations Bureau, and the U.S. Secret Service for the outstanding work and dedication on this investigation specifically related to a Postal Service employee. I'll start with a little bit of background about the Postal Service. The U.S. Postal Service has a long and proud history dating back to 1775. The Postal Service employs more than 630,000 men and women who are dedicated public servants. Consistently, Americans rate the Postal Service as the #1 agency they trust to protect their privacy. For over 2 centuries, the Postal Service has honored its fundamental commitment to protect the sanctity of the mail and the privacy of the citizens that it serves. I represent the Office of Inspector General, as I indicated, and I want to share with you that the Postal Service OIG is one of the federal government's premier OIGs. It plays a key role in maintaining the integrity of the America's postal system. Our mission is to ensure efficiency, accountability, and integrity within the U.S. Postal Service. We achieve this mission of helping ensure confidence and accountability in the Postal Service by preventing and detecting fraud, waste, and misconduct. The Postal Service OIG employs over 1,000 exceptionally talented and dedicated special agents, auditors, and professional support personnel to meet the challenge of preserving the confidence and accountability of the U.S. Postal Service. The American public trusts that Postal Service employees will obey the law and honor the commitment to their duties. When that duty and trust is violated, as it was in this case, the Postal Service OIG investigates those matters. Today's indictment of Ms. Jasmine Black sends a clear message that mail fraud, identity theft, and obstruction of U.S. mail committed by a Postal Service employee carries very serious consequences and will not be tolerated. The public we serve can rest assured that the Postal Service OIG, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and our partner law enforcement agencies remain committed to safeguarding the integrity of the U.S. mail and ensuring the accountability and integrity of U.S. Postal Service employees. If anyone seeing this briefing has any additional information related to this matter, they may report that through the USPS OIG hotline at www.uspsoig.gov or by telephone at 888-USPS-OIG. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Next up, it's my privilege to introduce Jacob Cinco, Assistant Special Agent in Charge of the U.S. Secret Service here in the District of Nevada.
Thank you, everyone. First off, I just wanted to thank Mr. Trutanich and the work of his office, specifically with the white collar unit that helped us investigate this investigation against Ms. Jasmine Black. Again, my name is Jacob Cinco. I'm the assistant to the special agent in charge at the Secret Service office here in Las Vegas. With the establishment of the CARES Act in March of 2020, we began to notice various schemes that were used by criminals to take advantage of the economic relief packages. It began to emerge in both federal and state unemployment assistance programs and consequently the American citizens. The U.S. Secret Service and our law enforcement partners have continued to work with financial institutions and state unemployment offices to pursue investigative leads associated with state unemployment fraud and identity theft. I specifically would like to acknowledge and thank the work of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department with the personnel that are in their cyber operations unit. Members are also part of the Secret Service's cyber fraud task force. It was their efforts that originated with the Okoye case, which was a money laundering unemployment case, where they were able to identify Ms. Black and led to our coordination with Postal OIG. Secret Service will remain committed to our investigative priorities in mitigating any attempts made by criminals to target citizens for financial crimes related to unemployment fraud. Thank you.
Next, it's my privilege to introduce Ray Johnson, Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI here in Las Vegas and the District of Nevada. Ray?
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks to everyone. Nationwide, the FBI has seen a spike in fraudulent unemployment insurance claims involving stolen personally identifiable information, or PII as it's called, largely attributable to the COVID-19 pandemic going on. The true victim of these fraud crimes are unemployed citizens relying on these benefits to feed their families and keep a roof over their heads. The FBI will continue working with our government and law enforcement partners to stop those who illegally profit on the backs of taxpayers. It is important during times of crisis we all remain vigilant to the numerous types of scams diverting much needed resources to the genuine recovery efforts. I thank all of our partners in the Southern Nevada law enforcement community, as well as throughout the state of Nevada, on these indictments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before the press conference started, we passed out both a press release as well as criminal complaints, or they're available here in this room. Because these investigations are ongoing and there's more to come, we are going to conclude the without taking questions. Thank you very much for your time and for covering this law enforcement operation. Appreciate it.